Yeah, so if you weren't here earlier, I kind of combined things together, but I'm just going to go over the updates from the CVSS SIG again. Feel free to stop me, ask questions, whatever. The thing that I wanted to do at the end, see Vivek, is that all this stuff's on the Discord. The link goes to the tool that I talked about earlier. Um, the presentation, both presentations are in the GitHub there in the resources folder, so you can feel free to grab it if you didn't see the earlier talk. So all that stuff's out there, and I'll walk through the updates from the CVSS SIG. Oops, sorry. No. I'll go back. So I'll walk through the updates from the CVSS SIG, talk about the survey that we did, what's been going on with the CVSS version 4 for the last year or so, and what some of the data sources look like that we're looking at in version 4. So I'm Nick Leali. I'm one of the CVSS SIG co-chairs. I've been the co-chair for about 2 years now. I've been using CVSS version 4 for a long, long time. I was in my previous role inside Cisco as part of our third-party software management system, and now I'm a incident manager in Cisco PSIRT. We use CVSS as part of our program. And that tool, the link that you got is, I'm a very, very amateur software developer. Please be kind to me. I do not do this professionally, but I wanted to write this tool to answer some of the questions that I had. So you can check that out as well. If you're interested in version 4 adoption in your own environment, you can use that tool for yourself. I wanted to thank all the CVSS SIG members. I've seen many of them today. It's really a group effort on the CVSS SIG. Lots of contributors over the years who've been a big part of the program. A lot of passionate people who care about CVSS and contribute, and also users of CVSS, consumers, producers who provide feedback, who give feedback to the SIG to help us make it better. We're trying to make it better all the time. So thank you to the SIG members, to my co-chair, Dale Rich, and everybody else who provides feedback to CVSS. So in the last year, there have been many vendors who've adopted CVSS version 4. The CVE program and NVD have both added tooling support for CVSS version 4 in their environments. The CVE program is going on 5,000 CVSS version 4 vectors in their environment, in their database. The GitHub really is the largest adopter of CVSS version 4, the largest producer of CVSS version 4. They're going on 8,000 CVSS version 4 vectors in their database between reviewed and unreviewed data. And there are, at my count, 56 unique vendors who are producing CVSS version 4 scores. The largest by far in the CVE database is VolDB, followed by Juniper, Intel, Siemens, and several certs, including ICS cert and CISA. So there have been a lot of producers of CVSS version 4. And we continue to work on the documentation. We have our examples document where we've been adding more and new examples to the document. We've added examples for server-side request forgery, cross-site request forgery, the regression flaw, additional examples and clarifications for subsequent system impacts. We've added examples for cross-site scripting and CISA-KEV. I have this rotating section that I'm updating. I'm just picking one from the CISA-KEV. Something fun that we've kind of discussed, and it's more top of mind for people who are looking at some of the documentation. We've added more items to the FAQ. We've added, tied back to that cross-site request forgery and how some of those things may differ. FAQs on updates about the math. Lots of questions about the math, questions about the math. So that FAQ to answer that. More tooling, examples about or FAQ items about how to implement calculators in your own environment. If you're interested in tying CVSS calculators to your internal applications or part of your external applications that customers look at as part of advisory or otherwise, that's out there, as well as the one we did most recently about CVSS vector reassessment, and that is where vendors can take a CVE that may affect their product. There's already existing CVSS assessment for it, and they generate a new CVSS vector that's appropriate to their own platform. That's something a lot of vendors are doing, and we're trying to put more support behind that so that consumers and producers can understand what unique per platform impacts there are for certain vulnerabilities. A question in the room.
When you talk about CVSS vectors, I know there's 10 vectors, attack vectors and stuff to make the current. You mean like 11, 12, 13th vectors that are used in the base calculation?
No, I'm sorry. So we talk about the vector string as all the metrics that make up CVSS.
Mhm.
So in this process, we're talking about a custom, like Cisco, for example, we have a CVE that affects our environment. There's a CVSS vector for that. Say it's a vulnerability in OpenSSL. It has this impact that's in NVD or the CVE program. We take that, we generate a whole new vector that's a new base vector string with all of the vectors, and then it's unique on a per platform basis. So it's for the same CVE, but it is different than the vector that was produced by either NVD or the primary vendor in the CVE program.
So when you have individual vendors doing that, doesn't that kind of get away from the whole standardization of these are the calculations we're using in the vectors to calculate an objective score on this particular CVE?
Well, it is still the standard. It's still all of the standard vectors, but the assessment is more appropriate to the platform.
There's 17 different routers, all the wireless stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So the comment was, talking about the differences between the impact of a vulnerability on a workstation versus a server, on a router versus a firewall versus an endpoint. Exactly. Yes. So the standard is the same. The vectors are all the same, but they are assessed differently per platform. So you can take a look at the most recent FAQ, first.org/CVSS/FAQ, and that vector reassessment to help explain it. Yeah, so we're trying to get to where we can have more relevant per platform assessments, not just one broad one for every CVE that exists for every platform and product on the planet, but something that's more unique to the platform.
So basically, when we're looking at a per product for a vendor, we're looking at a context-based risk as opposed to the general CVSS, which is in the CVE. The question I've got is I mean, because listening to him, I heard it in his voice. It's like, well, we've already got the CVSS. So how do we go about arguing that with, like, say, a customer of Cisco or a regulator, or like an agency, a government agency who's going to look and say, CVE said this was a 9, we need this remediated now, and you're saying it's a 3, it'll be fixed in a version 3 months from now because it's not critical.
I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a regulator. I don't know how to answer that question, but at least you can start by looking the FAQ on first.org/CVSS and say, hear them say, hey, this came from my vendor who should know more about their product than the score in the NVD, and we should use that assessment because they know better.
That's a very loaded question. When you say the vendor should know more, I don't dispute that the vendor knows more. I also know that the vendor has a incentive to not have a high risk vulnerability active in their system. And the question is going to be brought up of, I'm going to say NVD gives us a score of 7. The vendor gives it a score of 3. That's a disconnect. So how do I prioritize to my senior leadership saying, or more importantly, to my developers' senior leadership saying, you need to prioritize that lack of standard and lack of consistency it gives me more gray hairs than I already have.
Now, I understand it's a difficult question to answer. Curl, the developer of Curl, wrote a blog post called CVSS is Dead to us, talking about this problem because there was a vulnerability in Curl that was like this terrible 9.8, and the Curl developer said, hey, this is wrong in how it's really used. This is the impact. So these assessments may be very different on a per platform basis. So we're at least starting that conversation with the understanding that vulnerabilities may impact platforms differently depending on the platform. And we're starting that. So that was the most recent update to the FAQ. Two couple other questions.
Yeah, I have a quick follow-up. So are you saying that for CVSS version 4.0, we will in NVD have vendor-specific CVSS assessment along with like when the CV was initially published?
It has nothing to do with NVD. It's not in NVD. It's not even unique to CVSS version 4. It is simply the idea that a given CVE may have different impacts depending on the platform that where it exists.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
all. Okay, thanks.
One more. Yeah, back here. Yeah. And again, this is not CVSS's thing to solve. We are not authoritative. We're simply bringing to light this idea.
Yeah, quick comment from the sideline. And this was already implemented in CVRF and CSAF, where you can bind your CVSS vector to the specific product. The question that I have is more schema based. So when I looked at the schema and we were trying to implement that or trying to incorporate that in CSAF, we realized there is the threat score and the threat severity, as well as the environmental score and environmental severity. But I was unable to find how those things are computed. Do you have any advice or any guidance on that? Since we want to have a valid schema, we want to be able to check that this is the right computation, and at the same point, the environmental vector is often used to tell people, hey, this is the base vector from the CVE, but in my environment, or in that specific environment where I am currently at, that zeroes out, and it doesn't affect me for reason X, Y, Z. So 2 questions for you.
Now, it's a complex decision about how to make those determinations, especially with unique threats and environments. I don't specifically, we have some guidance in the examples and we're trying to work on those. If you have suggestions, I would love to hear them. We can add them to our examples and our guidance, and I'd love to work through that. But no, I think the SIG can do a better job at helping producers and consumers to make those decisions. And so that's something that we're trying to work on.
A second comment from an implementer's perspective. If you do, so we really like that you did a public review before. I just looked at the schema, not at the spec, so that's why I missed the part that that environmental score is not defined or was not defined before. If you come up with a JSON schema, it would be really appreciated if you use the draft 2012 in JSON schema, as it not only brings some additional fields, it also resolves some incompatibilities with the older versions. So makes it easier for us to integrate it.
Yeah, I know that CSAF is working on 2.1 that will include CVSS version 4. There's a schema as part of the CVE program and NVD that supports these. I agree that we are all here talking about the vulnerability information ecosystem. I think we can do a better job collectively about exchanging those things. So yeah, we do need to improve on that. And we're continuing to have those conversations. Was there one more question? Oh, okay. So, these are all questions that have come up. We are interested in how to move the SIG forward. So we launched this survey. We have some questions about what some of the pain points are and adoption rates and how consumers and customers are using CVSS. So in 2024, we launched this. We have over 500 responses. If you're interested in taking the survey, it's in the Discord. Go check it out. So we're asking primarily about issues and concerns and how the feeling is about CVSS version 4. And most respondents say they like it. 74% of survey respondents say they have favorable opinion. And the question was, is it worth moving to CVSS version 4? So all of them generally, say it's worth it. If they are not using CVSS version 4, it's basically split. So they're not using it, we don't think it's worth it. But among adopters, if you are a consumer on the left or a producer on the right and you are using CVSS version 4 currently, they think it's worth it. The 85% of organizations who've adopted version 4 and produce version 4 vector strings think it's worth it. But there are challenges that, we asked about what some of the challenges to adoption are. It's kind of all over the map. There's lagging tool support. We talked about it's not being supported in CSAF yet. It took a while to get support in CVE program and NVD, right? It takes time. It takes time for internal tools to be updated, right? That adds complexity. It takes time to move that, and there's lots of concerns about the math as well. So there's not any one reason that is kind of slowing V4 adoption. It's a number of things. We're trying to address some of these things with documentation and advocate for tools and helping to aid in that. But really, there's quite a bit of V4 adoption. Now, this is a survey about V4, so most of the respondents, about half, said they are using version 4. So that's maybe not so surprising, but it is the largest reported usage of versions of CVSS 4. But lots of versions of CVSS are being used among respondents. Still version 2, 3, and 4. But it's not just different versions of CVSS that's being used. It's lots of other scoring systems as well. Many organizations, more than a third, use 2 or more systems as part of their program. So they're using SSVC, EPSS, the scores and assessments that their own vendors provide, as well as internally developed systems. So CVSS does not work in a vacuum. Most respondents reported using CVSS in combination with other systems in their organization. So we've taken this survey data, some of the answers that we've gotten, and we're trying to make a plan for moving forward. What we're not doing is releasing any new standard in any time, any near future. Version 4 is still fairly fresh. It's been out for less than 2 years. We may do a version 4.1 update in the next year or so, but certainly not in 2025, maybe 2026. Version 4 will be stable for a while. We talked about those per product assessments, different impacts of CVEs per platform. We need to kind of solve and work on the data exchange standard for that, and provide legal or regulatory or compliance reasoning for those, understand. But in reality, there just are different impacts of CVEs depending on the platforms of your environment. And we've been working a lot on this, what we're calling an enhanced user guide. It's an implementation guide. It's about how end consumers, owners, runners of vulnerability management systems can use CVSS in their environment, can mature the use of CVSS in their environment, and kind of level up how they're doing assessments based on vulnerability management, in their vulnerability management programs based on CVSS. So you know, CVSS is convoluted, it's complicated, it's hard to understand, but it's what we've got. We're trying to make it better. If you want to help us make it more complicated, come over. You know, you know where to find us. We're always looking for more examples, feedback. You know, you have questions about scores, about examples, about the standard, you can come, you know, reach out to us. So we have a couple, maybe a minute left, and I'll let you all get to lunch if there's any other questions from the room. All right. Yeah. One more. Just so they hear you.
So I apologize. I don't know nearly enough about the difference between 3.1 and 4.0. I know at my company we're either moving to it or not moving to it. Are there tangible benefits from your opinion and tangible differences between 3.0, 3.1, and 4.0, and even what 4.1 is going to become, where we're going to have to modify our own internal processes on the ingestion of the CVSS scores?
I wish you were here about an hour ago because I have this slide for you.
I was next door.
Yeah.
I was trying to.
But hey, the recording will be available and the presentation is on the Discord. You know, take a look. But yes, version 4 is different. I think it's worth it. I think it has more fidelity. It makes, you know, that has supplemental metrics. It has you know, the split of vulnerability, vulnerable system and subsequent system. I think it has some very nice things. I'm very proud of it. The numbers are different. The numbers will change. If you're going to move to version 4, you need to understand how those things are going to change in your environment. I have a tool that you can use if you have information from your environment about those scores. You can look at what some of those changes will be. This is some of the data that I went through, looking at how some of the scores will change based on those data sets, depending on the data that's your environment. So it's going to change a lot. Version 4 is different. It's not just a drop-in replacement for version 3. So you need to be forewarned.
So Nick, would you, I guess I'm there, I'm an educator and I educate people on 3.0 and 3.1 all the time. And 4 is something we're looking at. I mean, my take is the environment's changing, the software development environment's changing. 3.0 was fantastic when we bought software off the shelf before GitHub, before open source really kind of has gone the direction it's gone in. So my take is, and just my summary on, I didn't see the previously, so I'm going to watch the replay, but that's, you know, it takes more into account there. And so, you know, that's where I think the value is. But I'll just point out the blue box in the upper right-hand corner. I noticed the scores increased, so, which was kind of scary.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll be in here the rest of the day for our other CVSS talks. We'll see you later.